Are you ready to sell your house? Well, you might be asking yourself, what kind of costs am I going to run into when I try to sell my house? Are there any hidden fees, hidden costs that I may not know about when I'm ready to sell my house? What are those? Is there anything I can do to avoid those costs? Obviously, you want to make the most amount of money and put that in your pocket when you're done selling. So what are those costs that you may run into? Let's go over that in this video that starts right now. Hi, I'm Chad Scott with eXp Realty. I'm so glad you're here to watch another one of my videos. If you like these, please hit the subscribe button down below and the bell to be notified of new videos. I drop a new video every Monday at 10 a.m. Always real estate related and always very informational. So you've done your homework. You're ready to sell your house. You know what your house is worth. You know what you're going to list it for. You've done all the calculations. You know how much money you're going to walk away from at the end of the sale.
Or do you?
There are some hidden costs that come with selling your house. They're not really hidden. They're disclosed and everybody knows about them. It's just that most sellers, if this is their first time selling, may not know what these costs are. So let's go over them. Cost number one, upgrade costs. Sure, these costs are normally incurred before you put your house on the market, before you're ready to sell. You know, you update that kitchen, you update that bathroom. You do that weeks, months, sometimes maybe even days before you're ready to put the house on the market. But you're upgrading those because you're ready to sell the house. So remember, those are costs that you're incurring to list your house. So keep that in mind when you're ready to list your house. You know, did you spend $7,000 on a bathroom upgrade? Will that net you a return when you're ready to sell? You know, will that increase the value of your house by $10,000, let's say? Keep that in mind when you're ready to list your house. You want to make up these costs that you incurred throughout the years or months. Cost number two you may incur as a seller are repair costs. As a buyer, buyers almost always want to do an inspection on the house. Their realtor's going to suggest it, and it's just good practice as a buyer. You want to make sure that the house you're buying is not going to fall apart or need costly repairs the first month that you move into it. Just basic common sense typically for buyers. Now, a buyer usually doing a home inspection. You know, some of these repair costs may be super cheap things, like they may be asking you to reground an outlet. That's a pretty common thing, especially here in Kenosha, are outlets that are now not grounded properly. They may be asking you, fix a leaky faucet. Something super simple like that. You know, that's not going to cost you a lot of money. You may be able to do it yourself even. But what if they find something a little more costly? Say your roof hasn't been replaced in 30 plus years and it's starting to leak. Maybe you didn't know about it. Maybe it hasn't leaked through the attic yet and you haven't seen any spots in the ceiling yet. So, the home inspector goes up in the attic and checks for leaks like that. Maybe your HVAC system, your heating and cooling system isn't working properly. Maybe at the time of the inspection, it didn't turn on. These costs can be much more expensive. A new roof could average, between $10,000 and probably like $30,000, depending on the type of roof you go with. A new HVAC system that runs on the cheap end of $3,000. So, maybe they find these costs a little more costly repairs that you have to make as a seller. Of course, you may be selling your house as is, but I always tell my sellers, as is just a saying. Buyers can still ask for that inspection. They can still ask for repairs. And if you refuse to make these repairs, they can always walk away. So unless you're willing to hold strong on that as is stance and say, I refuse to make any repairs at all, no matter what you come up with, you may still be on the hook for some of these costly repairs. Especially if you want to sell the house quickly, and with the first buyer that comes along, you may have to eat the cost and just make those repairs. Keep that in mind when you're ready to sell your house, that the potential buyer may come along and ask for some repairs. A lot of savvy sellers, they'll have a home inspection done before they even put the house on the market. So the inspector may catch some of this stuff before you put it on the market. Say a leaky roof. So you can upgrade that roof before you even put it on the market. That way the buyer's not going to ask for it. It's not an unexpected expense you're going to have when you're trying to sell a house. It's something you already know about and something you've potentially already taken care of, or at least disclosed to the buyer and said, our roof is leaking. We're not going to repair it for whatever reason. Now, when you're selling a house, typically the buyer pays for the inspection fee, for the home inspector to come in and check the house and find all these things wrong that they may want repaired. But there are some typical seller paid inspection fees. If you don't live in the city, you live out in the county, say Kenosha County, or even parts of Lake County, where they don't have city water and sewer, typically the seller is the one that pays for the well and the septic inspections. Those run typically $500 to maybe $1,500 just for the inspection. If it needs to be done, of course, those costs can go up. In Illinois, a seller is required to pay for the survey of the land. Wisconsin, a survey is not required for the sale of purchase. A buyer can ask for it, but it's not required. In Illinois, you have to have a survey done when you sell the house. It's in the contract. You can work that out with the buyer and say, we don't want to pay for a survey for whatever reason. Surveys are about $700 depending on the survey company you choose to go with. So keep that in mind when you're ready to sell your house. There are some seller incurred expenses with inspections, such as surveys, well and septic tests. Cost number 4 you may incur as a seller when you're ready to sell your house are realtor fees. If you choose to hire a realtor to help you sell your house, realtors keep track of dates and deadlines for you so you don't have to. They do the follow-up for you with any potential buyers that come through and look at your house. They follow up and see if there's any feedback with them, see if there's any concerns they may have with the house that you may want to take up and fix yourself. Realtors just make your life a lot easier when you're trying to sell your house. So if you decide to hire a realtor to sell your house, there are realtor fees. Realtor fees vary based on area and geographic location. Realtor fees here in Southeast Wisconsin are different than they are in Illinois and are different than they are in California and New York. Typically, a realtor fee is a percentage of the sales price of the house. That percentage varies greatly between area. I can't tell you what the percentage is. Talk to a local realtor when you're ready to sell your house and ask them what they charge for selling a house. A lot of realtors like myself, we do a flexible commission. So it depends on the terms of the sale. If we find the buyer, if you find the buyer, all kinds of different things like that. So realtor fees are another cost that the seller will have to incur at closing. Cost number 5 you'll incur as a seller are property taxes. So if you don't pay your property taxes yourself every quarter or every year or, pay them in January for the year ahead, typically people escrow their property taxes. So you make one monthly payment to your finance company and they pay the taxes for you at the end of the year. If that's the way you do your escrow your taxes, you have to pay property taxes from January 1st until the day you close. So let's say you close on October 1st. You're paying for property taxes from January 1st until October 1st. For that year. Those property taxes, they come out of the proceeds from your sale. And if you do escrow your taxes, you'll get all, if not most of that money back in the form of a check from your finance company a few weeks after you close. Because obviously you've paid the taxes already. So your finance company pays out the escrow money in the form of a check and mails it out to your new address. So just keep that in mind as a seller. One of the things you're gonna have to pay at close is prorated property taxes. If you do escrow them, you will typically get most of that money back in the form of a check from your finance company in a few weeks after close. Seller incurred expense number 6 when you're trying to sell your house are any closing costs credits you may be given to the buyer. So at the time that the buyer made an offer to purchase your house, they may have asked for closing cost assistance or closing cost credits. So what those are is that the buyer doesn't have enough money in their checking account or savings account to cover all the closing costs that they're going to incur. So they're asking you as the seller to pay those closing costs for them. So that money comes out of the proceeds from the sale of your house, and basically you're giving that money to the buyer. Now typically what happens is that the buyer will offer over asking price an amount of those closing costs so that while you're paying them, you're still netting the same amount of money. But that's not always the case. When you receive an offer that asks for closing costs, make sure you go over this with your realtor or with yourself and make sure that you're okay with it. But these closing costs then go to the buyer and it covers their costs from their lender, their prepaids, whatever charges their lender may be charging them. So that is another expense that a seller may have to pay when they are closing on a sale of their house, or buyer closing costs. Seller cost number 7 that a seller may have to pay at closing for their house is title search. Whenever you sell a house or buy a house, you have to do title search. What that does is they go back in the records of the house, they make sure there's no liens against the house. When the new buyer buys the house, they don't owe somebody else money that you actually owe them. If they find anything against the house or the property, you pay that with the proceeds of your house. The buyer also does title search. So they search the buyer, they search for judgments against them, liens against them. Typically in most states, you cannot buy a house if there's a judgment against you. You have to pay that judgment off first. So that's what title search is for, but there's a fee associated with that, of course, because there's people doing that work. That fee varies. It typically goes by the cost of the sales price of the house. I would say usually about $2,000 to maybe $3,500 for a title search. Of course, that varies by state. That's the typical cost here in Wisconsin. Illinois, it's a little bit higher typically. Other states could be a different price as well. But title search is another cost that you'll incur as a seller ready to sell your house. So those are the typical costs that you're going to incur as a seller when you're trying to sell your home. Of course, every deal is different. There may be other costs that creep up or suddenly pop up that I may not have covered. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. I hope you found this video informative, and if you liked it, and maybe you're thinking about selling your house, check out the links down below. There's a link to my website for a free home evaluation. It'll give you a free cost analysis of what you could potentially sell your house for right now. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit the subscribe button down below, and if you found this entertaining and informative, please hit the bell button to be notified of new videos that drop every Monday at 10 a.m. Thank you so much. Have a great week, and I'll see you next Monday.